Welcome to Perspectives On, where we're giving the world a voice. We are a faith-based social justice forum where individuals give their perspectives on various topics. It's an opportunity to express their viewpoint, their stance, and their angle on justice issues affecting the community and globally. Each episode features guests presenting their perspective on things like climate change, the church, urban farming, and food insecurity, all through a unique faith lens. Come check us out. Give us your perspective. Hello and welcome to our Earth Day edition of Perspectives on Social Justice, where we continue to give the world a voice. I am Lara Lane White, your host. Since the very first Earth Day celebration on April 22nd, 1970, people from all over the world have joined together to raise awareness with the hope of protecting the earth for future generations. Our connection to the earth is the topic of the day. And today, we and over 100 million people around the world will celebrate and honor the earth and the concept of peace. This year's theme is Restore Our Earth. We must restore our earth, not just because we care about the natural world, but because we live on it. Every one of us needs a healthy earth to support our jobs, our livelihood, health, survival, and happiness. A healthy planet is not an option, but it is a necessity. So today we take a moment first to create awareness of some leading causes, and then we will finish up our time with testimony of communities, of the various communities' ecological response to the tragic environmental justice context. Let us begin. We were going to begin with some commentary relative to Cancer Alley. We will come back to that. But first, we want to introduce a young activist, Miss Kira Lee. And I want to start out by talking about how Americans everywhere are feeling the effects of our climate crisis. And there are many different ways that they are feeling it. We have various issues that are coming into play. We are also engaging in battles with fires and hurricanes, and it's a lot of different things we're dealing with. But with climate change, we have Americans everywhere feeling the crisis with the wildfires in the West, hurricanes in the Gulf, occurrences of extreme heat and rain in the heartland, and flooding, all giving evidence that addressing climate crisis is not an option for the world or for politicians, but it is as important as our survival in the economic crisis. And so we want to introduce Ms. Kira Lee, who's going to talk to us just a little bit about what the work that she's doing with the climate crisis. Kira, thank you for joining us tonight. Why don't you introduce yourself and just kind of talk about your work in the climate crisis?
Hello, my name is Kira Lee. I am a youth activist. I have recently graduated from the Climate Reality Project Leadership Corps, and I have founded two organizations, Climate Improve and RACC, Russian American Coalition for the Climate. You can find their websites easily, climateimprove.org, teamracc.org. I'm currently in the process of writing a book with publication expected maybe this year or next year, directed towards youth people trying to learn more about the climate crisis. And even here in my own town, I have been seeing the effects of the climate crisis, and I have wanted to do something about them.
Okay. Well, talk a little bit more about the work that you're doing. Let's just, and what you have been doing relative to the climate crisis, and give your opinion about what's going on in terms of the natural disasters we're seeing and how we can remedy those issues.
Well, yes. So Speaking of natural disasters and the climate crisis, I used to live in California, in which I lived in an area where there were a lot of fires and fire threats. And we left there recently because of the fire danger. If we had stayed, the fire season would have lasted all year and we would have been threatened. So, since we're not there anymore, I am now trying to do some climate work that would maybe divert the attention of the climate crisis. And
Awesome, awesome. We appreciate the work that you're doing on this issue, and we're gonna talk more. We'll be hearing more from Kira. She has as she said earlier, she does have a book coming out, and and we'll definitely be promoting her book on this broadcast. Uh, and one of the things that we want to make sure that we mention with regard to the climate crisis is that there are things that we can do to make sure that we do not add to the issues that are coming. For example, there is a lot of information today. Just today, they were talking about the water levels in Lake Michigan are causing some serious erosion along the edges of, and people are losing their homes. And so there's a lot of things that is contributing to that. That if we have to stop the carbon emissions, we have to. There's a campaign to ban the use of gas vehicles by 2023. There are a lot of different things that we can do, that we can start. And I'm so proud of the fact that we have Kira on us today, that with us today, that's serving as an example, because her generation is the generation that is going to really make a difference when it comes to our environment. So thank you so much, Kira, for being a part of this broadcast. We're gonna move on and talk a little bit about what's going on with regard to Cancer Alley, and we'll come back to you, Kira.
thank you.
Mhm. So let us begin with part of the southern corridor known as Cancer Alley. Cancer Alley is literally poison to its communities, with neighborhoods sitting right next to the petrochemical facilities. Pictured is the petrochemical corridor. This corridor consists of more than 150 industrial plants running 85 miles along the Mississippi River. In addition to the refined oil, these plants produce things like asphalt, rubber, and the like. And as you suspect from the topic, this corridor is commonly referred to as Cancer Alley. Why? Because it has nearly touched all the lives of its residents. Yeah, we were hoping.
I have 100 people in the meeting. Has anybody in the room had anybody in their house die of cancer? Everybody stand up.
Someone just passed away 3 houses down from cancer.
Because I had one friend, I went and visit her on 4th Street on a Friday. And that Monday morning, I got up, I said, I'm going to go see Mary Alice. I got a call, she was dead. She died of cancer. She had 3 other sisters. She had 2 brothers that died with cancer.
I'm trying to think who I know that died that didn't die from cancer since I moved back here.
That was Mr. Russell Honore of the Green Army. He was featured in a Now This News documentary on Cancer Alley, along with Martha Huckabee and Betty Bingham, both of whom are residents of the they're both residents of this St. Rose community in Louisiana. And to talk a little bit more about Cancer Alley, we have featured this evening Mr. Michael Malcolm, who comes to us. Michael, it's good to have you. Glad that you're here.
Yeah.
Can you talk? Can you talk a little bit about what you know about Cancer Alley in terms of creating some awareness?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about them. I can tell you that they are a historic EJ site. Cancer Alley has historically been one of those infamous EJ sites where cancer has reigned supreme, but not only cancer, poverty has also reigned supreme. And one of the injustices of many injustices is that many of the people who are polluted and who are poisoned by living in that vicinity can't get jobs in those industries that are the ones that are polluting and poisoning them. So there's a lot of work to be done in Cancer Alley. Unfortunately, that Cancer Alley is often ignored, which is another injustice. In our fights for stopping pipelines and our fights for lowering carbon pollution, we often ignore Cancer Alley, and it's unfortunate, but the reality is it's because people that look like you and I live in that area.
Definitely.
And so anti-Black racism is not just in our society at large, but it also exists within our environmental community as well.
Yes, and that's very unfortunate that communities where Black and brown people live, the property values are where they are, and so it makes it easy for these companies to come in under the guise of creating jobs and stability, financial stability, when the entire time, I mean, it becomes a dumping ground. So.
Well, one of the things that Dr. Beverly Wright and Dr. Robert Bullard would tell you about Cancer Alley and Louisiana at large is that they are some of the one of the richest states as far as industry is concerned, but the poorest state as far as the population is concerned. That right there says a whole lot. And if you really want to see injustice, follow the dollars. It's sad to have people. Not just that, I need to also add that it's predominantly Black as well. And so when you want to see injustice at hand, look in Louisiana and see what's going on in Cancer Alley. And you can see all of the societal ills that we face and that we fight against.
Yes. 150 companies along that corridor that are contributing to and in the testimonies and the videos from Mr. Honore and those other residents of the Rose, I think it's called the St. Rose community in Louisiana.
Let me tell you too, Doc, that Mr. Honore was actually, or is actually, retired General Honore, and not just a retired general, but he was, I want to say, either 3-star or 4-star general. I actually met General Honore when I was in the reserves, and he did a convention or a conference for us chaplains. And what is amazing about him is that he has the accolades, he has the resources, but instead of him taking his privilege and moving outside of Cancer Alley, he decided to take his privilege and use it to fight for justice in Cancer Alley. And I think that's something that we should commend him for. And it speaks to who we are as a people, which also says that we ought not necessarily celebrate exceptionalism, but we ought to understand that until we are all free, none of us are really free.
Right. That's right. You're right. And just like I use this quote all the time from Dr. King's, what injustice, if whatever affects one of us affects us all. And so it is terrible. And like I said, the testimonies where they're actually saying, hey, everybody that I know, like everybody in their family, or they don't know a person that didn't either has cancer or has died from cancer. And we're talking 150 companies along this 85 miles along the Mississippi River. And
And I know that you're focused on Cancer Alley, but I need to tell you that there is a Cancer Alley in just about every state in our United States of America.
I would imagine so. I would definitely imagine so. Okay, and thank you for that. We'll come back to that in our wrap up discussion uh, later on. But I want to kind of move on to talk a little bit about some of what happened earlier in the year, and with regard to President Biden's action on the Keystone that Keystone oil
Pipeline.
Yes, that's all. And I want us to make sure that that we talk a little bit about that, because it is it's just as it potentially could be. So early in the year,
Natalie Landreth. I'm a senior staff attorney and litigation manager at the Native American Rights.
Now that was Natalie Landreth that did. She has done a tremendous amount of work in working with the Native Americans in terms of providing information and providing some awareness about the Keystone. And I take a lot of information from her, but a lot of the information that she provided in a recent documentary, I got. So earlier in the year,
talk about sovereignty.
Had the Biden administration introduced a move to place a full stop to the Keystone XL pipeline, and in that move, I just want to explain a little bit about what the pipeline is. The pipeline is designed actually to shorten the distance and increase efficiency of the existing pipeline. And it was created to route oil all the way from Canada down to the Gulf of Mexico. It's actually owned by a Canadian company called TC Energy. That means that the oil is not really, it was controversial because the oil was not intended for use in the United States, but it was actually intended for use in China. And so that made it very highly controversial when they created the initial pipeline. But when they decided to create what they call the XL, or the shortcut, then those pipelines went directly through some of the the Native American reserves and some of the Native American lands. And according to the Native American Rights Fund, it creates only 35 jobs in the United States. And so there was the Native American Rights Treaty Fund actually brokered a treaty where they would regulate the amount of oil that would run through the pipeline. But in enforcing that treaty, they wanted to make sure that their main goal was to protect the water resources of the land against deprivation. And that included the Ogallala Aquifer, which was the largest groundwater source in the United States that waters 30% of the country's agriculture, as well as provide drinking water. So that piece of that, the Native American Rights Fund actually brokered that treaty, and that actually protected the water until they came up with the idea of the XL pipeline. And so it was highly controversial. But earlier in the year, we had Joe Biden in his first move, one of his first moves in the new administration. He introduced a move that actually placed a full stop on the Keystone XL pipeline. And I really wish I had the video to show you how that pipeline was run. Let's see, I can probably, so you can actually see how it runs through the various those various territories, and it is not here. Okay, so we have to move on to something else. And so we want to move on now to the whole idea of what can we do as a community? What can we do as a culture to heal the land? And given that I have an authority on the how different aspects of how to heal the land, and we have Reverend Dele. Reverend Dele, please. It is an honor to have you again. Please introduce yourself and talk about some of the work that you're doing in terms of healing, the healing of the land.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm glad that we have room for this perspective because it is a very different perspective than the one that's typically discussed. I'm a grandmother, a pastor, a climate reality leader from the 2014 cohort in Johannesburg. And that's where I learned that people of color all over the world are very much more focused on land-based solutions than economic solutions or market-based solutions because the indigenous idea is that if you kill the land, you kill the people. And the indigenous culture has a very integrated way of looking at environmental justice, food sovereignty, mental health. There's an understanding that human beings have a spiritual connection to the land. Our bodies are made of it. Our mental health depends on a good relationship with nature. And so you don't see the segmentation in indigenous cultures of single issues, and this issue is siloed over here, and you can only talk about one thing at a time because they understand that it's all related. And so in the 35 years that I have been practicing and teaching indigenous culture, I see this idea, this diversity of mindset, I see this on every continent. So it's not unique to just one particular land or not. Right now I'm on Munsee Lenape land, and we know that the Lenape tribe has been battling a Superfund site. One of the approaches to resolving this problem is to do some research on mushrooms. We all know that the mycelium are very powerful entities, that they can transmute substances. And so even the oil companies will use different types of mushroom spawn to clean up the oil spills. And so these are some of the policy issues that indigenous cultures are working on, is to get funding for technologies, ecological technologies that will actually correct the problem. Advocating in court is important. Getting financing for, to remediate all the harm that's done is important. But it's also important to shift the policy so that we look at Earth first, and we look at restoring the integrity of the Earth so that the water can be cleaned up, so that the air is cleaned up. And, again, this is what some of the people are doing. I think that you talked about people being ignored and leadership being ignored. One of the groups that's ignored is indigenous leadership. We don't find people listening at this particular time. So that's I just didn't want to go into that in great depth, but I did want to say that an integrated approach, looking at the diversity of issues as being connected to each other, that's a very important part of the solution. And it's something that the whole environmental movement would benefit from if they kind of opened up the dialogue so we can talk about the connectivity of all these issues to one another. Awesome.
Well, we brought up three important issues this evening. We brought up the healing of the land. We've talked about cancer reality. We've talked about various issues in social justice. All of it's connected to environmental justice and the issues that are related to one another. And so as we get ready to close out, I really want to get some perspective on, just kind of open up the floor in these last 5 minutes for a final perspective on the issue of the climate crisis. And I want to hear from everybody. And it's wonderful. I'm glad that we have Kira with us, as well as Reverend Malcolm. And Reverend Malcolm, we can kind of start with you. You can kind of help us out a little bit by sharing your perspective first. And, we'll just join in to the conversation. We have about 5 more minutes, and we just want to give final words on this Earth Day. And just it's April 22nd. It's a day that we all celebrate.
I'm just giving my final perspective on Earth Day.
Yes, sir.
Okay. First, let me say thank you for inviting me. And excuse me, it's always good to be with you, Reverend Daly. And Kira, it is good to see you once again. And I hope you're doing well. On Earth Day, we celebrate life. We celebrate community. We celebrate Mother Nature. We also celebrate the fact that we understand that we ought to care for life. We ought to care for community, and we ought to care for Mother Nature. And today, as always, I challenge you to do those things, to care for life, to care for community, and to care for nature, care for Mother Earth. Thank you again for inviting me.
Oh, thank you for coming. Kira, go ahead.
So, as someone who is so young and who has seen the climate crisis in action pretty much my entire life, I would like to thank you for inviting me to figure out my perspective on this. And I mean, I know I've heard the saying that Earth Day should be celebrated pretty much every day. And I do agree with that. I mean, Earth Day is something for the future. And if we don't solve this climate crisis, it's not going to be good. And we are going to suffer a lot more, and the consequences will be more dire in the future if we don't do anything about this now, or even at 2050. I mean, it's not looking too great right now, but I am seeing a bit of hope with Biden's new climate plan to decrease emissions by 2030 and to maybe reach the Paris guidelines or even more. What we really need is both policy and both everyone else to contribute to this. Just do everything you can, change a single light bulb. As long as it'll help, it helps. Every little bit counts. I'm just saying.
I'm just saying. All right, Reverend Daly, close us out.
Okay. Well, I think as we're talking about justice and the earth, it's good to remember that justice just means balance. And so if we want to have justice in any realm of life, we have to first balance our relationship with earth. We are the mirror image of earth. The trees provide us with oxygen, and we provide them with nourishment, and the water. Everything that exists in nature exists within the human body. And so if we want humans to thrive, we must first make sure that Mother Earth thrives. And I think that's it.
All right. Well, this has certainly been a wonderful Earth Day and Earth Day celebration. I've attended various online as well as in-person forums that talk about Earth Day, and we've been celebrating this now since the 1970s, and let's hope that we continue to address Earth Day with the same urgency that we've been doing. Also, there's things that we can do in our communities. There are certainly young activists as well as old activists that are providing us with intelligence and science in terms of what will happen if we don't do something about the climate crisis. But there's also a plethora of information on what we can do to minimize the impact. It's not too late, not right now, but it's, as I said earlier in the opening, it's not an option. It's a necessity. It's a necessity for our survival. And so we have to be more intentional about the work that we do. We have to make sure that we do what we need to do to be a part of the solution and not so much a part of the problem. So as we leave you, just remember, I just want to thank everyone, and just remember that our environment, this big blue marble that we live on, is ours, that God has created it for us. I challenge all of my friends in the ministry, my colleagues, I challenge church leaders, everyone, everywhere, to make the climate crisis, to the actions to activate and make climate crisis a part of your agenda. Make it part of what you do while you're having church picnics, while you're having special days, while you're celebrating anniversaries, pastor anniversary, church anniversaries. Let's celebrate the earth. Find a way to be intentional in your programming about celebrating the earth. So I thank you all for listening. As we leave you, please remember those famous words of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., that whatever affects one of us directly affects us all indirectly. Good night, everyone.
Welcome to Perspectives On, where we're giving the world a voice. We are a faith-based social justice forum where individuals give their perspectives on various topics. It's an opportunity to express their viewpoint, their stance, and their angle on justice issues affecting the community and globally. Each episode features guests presenting their perspective on things like climate change, the church, urban farming, and food insecurity, all through a unique faith lens. Come check us out. Give us